Hello there. So, I just want to give a warning before we get started on this chapter. It is called Death by Adoption. Um, there is going to be a trigger warning because this is talking about attempts. So if you cannot handle it, please, it's okay. We can skip it. We can go off. It's alright. I understand, and I want to give that full warning. Also, my other warning is that this is a very long chapter. So usually my videos have been ranging anywhere from like 12-15 minutes anywhere to a little bit over an hour. This will probably be an hour and a half, if not two, because there are a lot of pages to this chapter. And I am going to do this in one fellow swoop. So I hope that helps you guys, and let's get started. Alright, Lori Colangelo starts the chapter off with, "The dead cannot cry out for justice. It's the duty of the living to do it for them." Louis McMaster Bujold. Bujold? I feel like that J is silent. I don't know. Death by adoption. Suicide and attempted suicide by adoptees. In America, attempted suicides are more common among adolescent adoptees who live with their adoptive parents than for adolescents who live with biological parents. This is sourced from Adoption as a Risk Factor for Attempted Suicide in Adolescents by Elizabeth Goodman, Bin Hong in Pediatrics, the Official Journal of Pediatrics, which was in Volume 8, Number 2, in 2001. Korean and other international adoptees are highly overrepresented when it comes to suicide and suicide attempts, and that's by Hyejun in 2002. Swedish adoptees had problems showed at a high level of psychiatric illness and addiction, criminality, and suicide at a 5 times ratio. With the non-adopted group. Nationally, about 20% of students have considered suicide within the past 12 months. When a child gets into middle school, and especially high school, they are struggling with their identity issues and wanting to belong. These issues are compounded by uncertainties of the adopted. In Adopted Killers, 430 adoptees who killed, how and why they did it, which is available on Amazon, also written by Lori Colangelo. Of just those 430 adoptees who killed, 14 committed suicide, usually during or right after the commission of a school shooting or other mass killing, as a planned or anticipated accompaniment of that violence. Out of 147 suicides involving drugs from 1983 to 1993, 142 came from adoption backgrounds. That was sourced by Brother Alex MacDonald, Jesuit priest and youth worker, published in Melbourne, Australia in 1993. Janice Tate said her adopted son Jacob struggled with issues of acceptance and rejection before he joined the military. Corporal Jacob A. Tate, 21, was killed in combat in Iraq, having never discovered his birth family. It is suspected that some adoptees put themselves in harm's way from suicidal feelings, while others with unknown pre-adoption pasts join the military in hope of finding their purpose and place in the world. As previously cited, the Catholic News Agency reported in 2010, the Symposium by Mexican Institute on Sexual Orientation, RENACER, reported that most children adopted by same-sex couples display greater levels of stress and suffer from suicidal tendency and attempts. And by the way, this is all quoted. Some adoptees who succeeded in suicide include Ashley Bunk, Joseph Cannon, who was a serial killer, David Cassidy, Tiffany Claire, Melody DiLorenzo, who was an attempted, Jolie Dominguez, succeeded after multiple attempts, William Freund, a spree killer, Daniel Jose, Timothy Jones, Joseph Callinger, who was a serial killer, Charles Little Jr., who killed adopters, Russell Mannix, Evan Ramsey, Alaska school shooter, Andre Simpson, who was age 9, Noah Stone, drug addicted, attempted, Joseph Wes Becker, who was a spree killer, Eileen Wuornos, serial killer and attempted. Oh my gosh. So this is only of what she listed of the 430 that these are only some of what she was talking about. There is actually a database of those who did. And I don't think it even records all of them, to be honest with you. I've had a few friends, one in particular that I can think of, who I don't know if she meant to, but she overdosed. And she was having a lot of problems. And I don't know if it was her adoption because I hadn't talked to her in quite a while. We were childhood friends. Through adoption, ironically, through the Adoptive Parents Committee, which is the oldest parent association to adoption, which was created in 1955 in New York City. But yeah, I'm going to let you guys know I've attempted 4 times. Obviously, I'm still here, but it's not something that ever goes away. I can cope with it, but I never want to go back in that dark place. Because even though I feel dark at times, that was a really, really dark place. Anyway, some of the celebrity adoptees who committed suicide, including Bill Burrell, who was black market adopted, son of comedian Milton Berle, Lenny Bruce, who famed stand-up comic and political satirist, Clark Gable, Marilyn Monroe, Hugh O'Connor, who was adopted by the actor Carroll O'Connor, and Michael Bryan Osmond, one of Marie Osmond's 5 children. Ooh, I didn't know any of that. Suicide by mothers due to loss of child to adoption. Oh my gosh. The young women with poor self-esteem and low assertiveness might take decades to forever drop her denial and collusion with the beliefs peddled by the adoption agency. Geoff A. Rickerby, MBBS psychiatrist. These mothers are often mistakenly confined to the category of mothers suffering from postpartum depression, but when put in perspective of so-called quote-unquote voluntary relinquishing mothers, we find the untold stories of suicide and attempted suicides were the result of coerced or forced adoptions. Yeah, we don't often talk about this. I'd be interesting to see the statistics and hear more from first mothers on this. But here are 2 examples. Cindy Jordan, who wrote the article Fast Track Adoption Ends in Suicide in 2004. The people who adopted her daughter broke promises to have an open adoption, and Cindy never recovered. She took her life. And then Annabelle Morris, teenage mother found hanged days after discovering her baby had been adopted, which was an article from 2011. Apologies if you ever hear background noise. I do have a kiddo and 3 cats who are quite annoying at times, so apologies. But anyway, moving on. Death from withholding of adoptees' families' medical information. Adoptees' deaths at an early age can often be attributed to their lack of true family medical histories sealed in their adoption files. That's so true. Many state laws and the Hague Convention now require agencies to disclose reasonable available records. That's still not true, but okay. But it can be unclear, especially in international adoptions, how diligent they are expected to be in getting such information. Access to medical information that could save the adoptee's life has been no concern to agencies and the courts. Instead, the concern has been for agency liability with regard to disclosure from a sealed or confidential adoption file. The epitome of hypocrisy in adoption circles may be exemplified in the new website Adoption Medical News. The site purports to share information from experts about the unique connection linking adoption and health. But this is the same Bill Pierce of the National Council for Adoption and CFA, the most vocal opposition to adoptees' right to know their family updated medical backgrounds. Basically, he doesn't care. He doesn't give a shit about us. Anywho, the tort of wrongful adoption has successfully litigated when suits were initiated by adopters who have collected large damage awards by claiming that agencies intentionally withheld known information about the adoptee's medical condition, past physical or sexual abuse, mental health issues, or pertinent family background. Rarely had a parent been represented in suit based on an adoption agency's fraudulent misrepresentation or refusal to disclose medical information. The Supreme Court had repeatedly refused certiorari to hear such issues by adoptees and parents. Passive state or agency private group registries do not result in transmission of information unless both parties are clairvoyant to know to register for exchange of information available. The agencies are prohibited from soliciting the required waiver of confidentiality from either the adult adoptee or parent before either can obtain disclosure. Typically, when disclosure of pre-adoption medical information is made, it is excerpted and summarized, not photocopied from actual medical records, if available at the time of adoption. Due to agency paranoia that some bit of identifying information may be leaked in the process, the recipients of medical summaries, which usually have been sanitized at social worker discretion and interpretation, carrying no guarantee that these interpretations by non-medical personnel are accurate, nor at the interpreter understand the full implications of medical terms and opinions of portions withheld. At best, selective disclosure at agency or attorney discretion is an agency's best interest, rather than mandatory full disclosure in child's best interest, and is still the norm throughout much of the United States. Social work theory and policies have fluctuated according to market demand for quote-unquote adoptable children. The introduction to Freundlich and Peterson's wrongful adoption alleges that in response to litigation initiated by adoptive families, courts have recognized a duty to disclose known material information about a child's health and social background to prospective adoptive families. If courts and agencies have recognized a duty, their actions overall have shown little evidence of it. Despite an increase in litigious adopters commensurate with an increase in fraudulent domestic, foreign, and internet-assisted adoptions. Freundlich and Peterson ask, should agencies automatically communicate any information provided to them after the adoption has been finalized? Shouldn't the question be, why aren't agencies automatically communicating medical updates and conforming to standardized policies? Perhaps the answer is that there's no profit in burdening an already overburdened system with such standards when children can be adopted from around the globe with only a cursory physical exam. Yeah. So definitely that would be helpful, that there was a database where it can constantly be updated so that the children can know any information. For me, for example, if I had known that my birth mother had MS and lupus before I was diagnosed a couple years ago, so it was 3 years ago. I think it's been like 3 years now. It would have been helpful when I was going through all these symptoms instead of me going through hell researching it and trying to find the best information possible. But she tells me recently, because, we have communication, and I was like, oh, that would have been helpful. But anyway, yes, I have an open adoption, but that doesn't mean that reunion is perfect. Just saying, we will cover that in a little bit. Anyway, I also don't know any of my birth father's information, so it's not all that helpful. Anywho, Clinton's administration adoption 2002 program was I cannot speak anymore. Was designed to double the rate of adoptions in 5 years, even though social workers were already overburdened by high caseloads, pressured to meet their quota of adoptions in order to obtain and retain federal funding for doing so. Most state and private agencies were concerned with the numbers than with the children's best interests. Freundlich and Peterson's recommendations for practice includes a provision for disclaimers stating that the agency can disclose only known health and other background information, and that the child may have been undiagnosed conditions, and that the agency cannot therefore guarantee present or future health or development of any child, because there is no follow-up after the placement, which is wrong, by the way. Social workers, adopters, and adult adoptees are prohibited from making unsolicited contacts with the biological family members for post-adoption medical information and updates, including for life-saving procedures such as organ transplants, requiring tissue matching with a blood relative, or discovery of inheritable illnesses, like I mentioned in my little story, right? Such practice is worse than purchasing a used car as is without warranty. A car dealer must at least comply with state lemon laws and safety codes. America can do better for its children. 1000%. But they don't care because they just make the money. Called a liar and a menace by Green Ribbon Campaign adoption activists online, Dr. Laura Schlesinger on the Dr. Laura Show in 2000 told an adoptee on her program that adoptees didn't need updated family medical history when deciding to have children. Oh, is that wrong? She also advised the mother not to tell her son that his father was an anonymous sperm donor. Oh, I'm so angry. We might have to get that clip. She also advised the mother not to tell her son that. Oh, wait, hold on. She went on to allege and advise her audience no one needs a family medical history because all the tests are now available. That's not true. That's not true at all. Amazing are the lies one tells oneself for selfish reasons that disregard the child. For real. Thomas E. Atwood, who was serving as President-in-Chief Effective Officer at the National Council for Adoption, NCFA, who had previously served on the board of Bethany Christian Services. Oh, we hate them. We hate them, hate them, hate them. An adoption agency who, by the way, is terrible and very well known for being, well, I should say infamous for being terrible, falsely stated in NCFA's Adoption Factbook, page 43, as follows. Mandatory openness adds nothing to the adopted person's ability to obtain medical record information. That's not true. The increasing availability of genetic testing is making the issue of medical records moot. Still not true, but okay. One can obtain more information about one's genetic predispositions from such tests than from medical histories of biological parents. Not true. I don't know how these people really don't give a frick about us. Like, seriously. Seriously. Anyway, doctors do not routinely test their patients for any more than 450,000 genetically transmissible diseases, which do not include all mutations and variations of disorders, syndromes, defects, and traits of procyclivids, unless the patient knows she or he has a family history of a specific disease, disorder, condition, defect, and traits or proclivities. In other words, an adoptee would need to be clairvoyant to know which to test for. Yeah. This is what I mean. More importantly, by the time the adoptee is exhibiting symptoms of an undisclosed inheritable disease, it is too late to prevent it and usually too late to treat it. So, like in my case, it's not too late to treat it. I don't know if I have MS. I hope not. I should probably go get myself checked. But with the lupus, I'm maintaining it as best as possible without medication right now. That's a whole other story. But it is definitely something that has been on my mind where, like in order to get tested, I had to know, and I had to really, really do a lot of um, research to even come to that conclusion. Anyway, where was I? Most importantly, by the time the adoptee is exhibiting symptoms of an oh wait, we said that. Also, the cost of testing can range from hundreds to thousands of dollars for each of the 35 most common DNA tests, depending on the size of the genes and the number of mutations tested. Not all labs offer all tests. One of the most serious limitations of the difficulty in determining a positive result because some people who carry a disease associated mutation never develop this disease. Another limitation of all testing is the possibility of laboratory errors due to misidentification, contamination, or other factors, which is why doctors ask patients what runs in the family. And I'm going to just tell you, as adoptees, we go, well, we don't know. We're adopted. Why don't you get that? Because most of us do not have our medical records. Now, if you guys follow my TikTok, I did recently find that there was a medical record in my adoption papers that I didn't know about. It is from my birth mom. However, it is very inaccurate according to my birth mother, and she was going to send me an updated. Got to get on that from her. But again, that's besides the fact that it's inaccurate, but even if it was accurate, that's only half of my family. Only half. So I'm still missing a lot. But that is still more than most people as adopted. That's more than most adoptees have. That's what I was trying to say. So you guys get the point. It's like, it's still not good. Anyway, the Human Genome Project was started in 1990. Its goal was to identify and map all the 20,000 to 25,000 genes of the human genome, and to determine the sequence of base pairs which make up DNA. Many of the medical field are concerned about the test potentials for producing anxiety and the risks for discrimination and social engineering that could outweigh the benefits of testing. Mail order test results will vaguely indicate a high or low probability with regard to only 25 of the 450,000 potentially genetic transmissible conditions related to cancer, cardiovascular, immunological, general health, and aging. The bottom line is, why should an adopted child or adult be deprived of the right to know whether there is or isn't family history of a common or rare disease, or that red hair or twins run in the family? The answer is that the price of being adopted by strangers is that the adoptee's best interests take backseat to others' perceived best interests in preventing direct contact for knowledge. In NCFA's Adoption Factbook, Mr. Atwood also falsely stated that many thousands of births parents were guaranteed confidentiality, ignoring the fact that confidentiality or privacy has never been a voluntary option in adoption but is imposed by statute. Records are sealed from the parties named in them, even in so-called open adoptions. Yep. It is unfortunate that Mr. Atwood earned his master's in public policy instead of scientific research, and that he derives his income from NCFA, which creates a conflict of interest in the NCFA, in that NCFA perpetuates the failed closed adoption system ahead of adoptees' best interests. In this golden age of genetic research, adoptees are dying who could be saved by prevention or early treatment if they had access to updated medical history or to their families. According to Peggy McKay, former Kansas social supervisor, nothing awful has happened in Kansas, where adult adoptees have had access to their birth records. Nothing awful happened in Alaska, an open record state, nor in Traverse City, Michigan, nor in Oregon, Tennessee, or Alabama, open record states where open adoption is practiced. Yet 44 states still withhold birth records from their adult adoptees. So I do want to say, because I actually was born in Kansas, that just because it's open doesn't mean you still have access. I know that's confusing, but the reason being is that unless your family gives you permission to gain access, you can't access it. So it would depend on the state whether it was adoptive family, like adoptive parents signed, or birth family signs. And in order to find that, sometimes you have to know who they are, and sometimes you don't know who they are, and that's confusing. Also, I want to mention with the medical records, they won't just give it to you. And like in my case, the hospital which I was born at completely closed and shut down, and I have being able to zero access any of those medical records without first contacting my birth family. Now again, I did talk to my birth mom, but I have no contact with my birth father. I have yet to hear back from him, so who knows. Anyway, Lori Colangelo does go on to have a brief chronology on the access to medical info ranging from 1981 all the way to 2010, but I'm going to skip that because I feel like if you guys want to read the book, you can grab it. I'm trying to keep this as short as possible, and this is a very long chapter. So let's continue on. So now we are switching to the roles of doctors, which their Hippocratic oath is first do no harm. And that actually started, interesting, in 5th century Greece. The role of doctors. In the past and even today, black market baby brokers can be doctors who also legally facilitate adoptions. They may be motivated by money or by a sincere, although misguided notion that they were acting in the child's best interest. For decades, there have been physicians who have lied to unwed mothers, telling them, quote unquote, the baby died. Then, with falsified death certificates and falsified birth certificates, they legalized adoptions of stolen newborns in high demand. Georgia's estimated 200 quote unquote hick babies, named for the doctor who sold them to their adopters, while 5,000 adoptees were babies and young children stolen and sold by Georgia Tan in Tennessee. Okay, Georgia Tan is a huge problem, and why there are certain legal measures in adoption right now. And that is a huge problem because we have to cover the Georgia. With fees for legal adoptions in recent years ranging from $20,000 to $60,000, a child can also bring as much as $80,000 to $120,000 on the black market for a variety of illicit purposes. And this is according to the Baby Brokers article in the Los Angeles Times Magazine. But doctors can also be an adoptee's best advocate in an effort to lessen deaths by adoption from withholding for adoptees and their biological families' medical histories. Dr. Boric Elman wrote, AM4, I received correspondence from the editors of a prominent diagnostic guide for doctors, and they are considering my recommendation that doctors should query patients as to any adoption in the family. they usually ask, but okay. Any therefore, my gosh. I have problems with adoption because of the genetic dishonesty it entails. Downplaying importance of genetics is hindering the efforts of humanity to understand viral illnesses, including AIDS, because viruses are little more than genetic particles. Americans for Open Records, AM4, proposed presidential campaign hopeful Congressman Ron Paul, MD, an obstetrician, we hate him, but anywho, for other reasons, and to the American Medical Association, AMA, that they should take up the issue of adoptees' inability to access true and current family medical information, as requested on every doctor's patient information form. Yeah, that still has yet to happen, but they will casually ask. Some will, should say. By lobbying for a uniform federal law, at least enabling physicians to access their patients' adoption files without need of a court order and without the burden of being required to prove good cause, which doctors don't have the time to pursue, and for which lawyers charge huge fees, without guarantee of success. Ideally, a doctor should only need the adult adoptee's signed release of medical information, or in the case of a minor, the adopter's signed release for continued care. The adoptee and or his adopter can then be legally informed by the physician as a confidential decision between doctor and patient, instead of having to mail a request to the court and agency for non-identifying background information, for a hefty fee, and or attend court hearing, which allows social workers and judges to quote-unquote practice medicine when making determination as to what an adult adoptee should or should not know about their own family medical history. Okay. Whew, that is a lot. That is a lot. Alright, we are continuing. Adopters who abuse and kill. Now again, I don't know if I'll so much go into this, but there are the adoptees. I know I did the chapter that might be up by now. I'm trying to think. It might be up by now. But anyway, you can check that out. I'll go into more detail. I don't really know if I want to go more in depth on the adopters beyond this chapter. But if you guys want, just let me know down in the comments. I don't know how I feel about that. Anyway, I need a deep breath, guys. Take a deep breath. It's been a long day already. On March 26, 2018, Jennifer and Sarah Hart, a married lesbian couple, deliberately drove themselves and their 6 adopted children off a cliff along Highway 1 in Northern California. Oh man, I remember that. Ruled a murder-homicide, authorities believe the 2 women had succumbed to pressure. Sarah Hart, the driver, had used the phone to search for information on suicide while their SUV was in motion. This was according to Francesca Paris and Laurel Wamsley when they wrote, the Hart parents intentionally drove off cliff in fatal crash, jury rules. And this was posted in NPR News on April 5th of 2019. Adam Pertman, executive director of the Evan B. Donaldson Institute, a New York nonprofit devoted to improving adoption policy, had no legitimate basis for a statement that far more children die of abuse and neglect in biological families than adoptive. And this was in Chicago Times in 2004. Headlines from 1996 through 2018 attest to an epidemic of adoptive parents murdering their adopted children. The following pages attest to the fact that adopted children who had been physically and or sexually abused and or murdered by their adopters are not rare, as some would like to believe. The abuse cases in international adoptions especially are too numerous to include in this book, or even count, and so cases of adopters who kill their adopted children in both foreign and domestic adoptions between 1996 and 2018 are provided in chronological order as case examples to suggest the reasons for these tragedies. When the supply of domestic white newborns exceeded demand in the United States, adopters turned to foreign countries whose children looked white, aka they're more Asian than anything, and or not necessarily Asian, but like European. Now, granted, a lot of European countries will no longer adopt out to the United States. They have banned it because of this instance, just so you guys know. Like, that has been something that's been happening. And who were readily available at a lower cost and without the red tape. Yeah, it's far easier to adopt foreign than domestic, by the way. Involved with procuring American children for adoption. Adopters could be confident that the child's biological parents in third world countries would not be knocking at the door demanding return of the child. But doctors and psychologists who treat foreign-born adoptees say that some adopters are rushing into adoption unprepared for the problems that can accompany youngsters from Eastern European and other orphanages, ranging from fetal alcohol syndrome to emotional disasters. But none of the news reports questioned the quote-unquote added burden to an already troubled child, from being expected only to adjust to calling a foreign stranger mommy and daddy, but also being taken to a foreign country. One sector of the elite views poor children as potential threats to society and at the same time as a means of fulfilling the desires of prospective adopters, especially when the child is white or light-skinned newborn. And this is sourced from the movement of the Mothers of the Courthouse Square, Legal Child Trafficking of Adoption and Poverty in Brazil by Andrea Cordella, posted in the Journal of Latin American and Korean Anthropology in 2009. The Dmitry Yakovlev Law, Act or Bill of December 28, 2012, by the Russian Federation, in part banned citizens of the United States from adopting children from Russia. It was named after a Russian orphan who was renamed Chase Harrison upon being adopted by Miles Harrison and his wife Percival Virginia. In Percival, Virginia. I thought that was her name for a second. I was like, wow, what a name. Guys, I'm telling you guys, it's been a long day, okay? The 21-month-old died of a heat stroke as a result of the adoptive father forgetting the boy he had strapped. The adoptive father forgetting the boy he had strapped into a car seat in a parking vehicle for 9 hours. The death followed a string of abuse and neglect deaths of Russian orphan adopted by Americans. Yeah, so I don't know if you guys know, this is really sad, but often when those car deaths happen, where the parent forgets their child, and I say that in quotes, yeah, I guess sometimes it could happen, but that's kind of like, how do you forget your child in the car? I'm a parent, and when he's not in the car with me, it feels weird. But yeah, sometimes I think it's really done on purpose because they're like, oh, I forgot the kid was in the car. But how do you forget like supposedly the most important part of your life, right? Your child. So sometimes I think it's done on purpose. Anywho, because 50,000 Russian children had been adopted by Americans from 1991 to 2009, it was probably wishful thinking by a lot of quote-unquote experts when deaths of Russian children at the hands of their American adopters officially totaled only 12 from 1996 to 2004. But by 2011, at least 30 Russian children had reportedly been killed by their American adopters, arousing media. But when 120 cases were believed to be the tip of the iceberg of American adopters who killed their adopted children in domestic adoptions, circumstances were said to have differed wildly into the deaths of the first 12 of at least 20 Russian adoptees whose adopters killed them, ranging from what prosecution portrayed of flashes of rage to prolonged abuse that spanned weeks. In researching failed adoptions based on the adoptees' outcomes, one finds that adoption promoters referenced skewed statistics and poor studies, as in one of the earliest in 1968 by the National Crime Justice Reference Service (HCJRS) Danish study, Mental Illness and Crime in Adopted Children and Adoptive Parents by Bratfors L. Ettinger and T. Tao, which studied only 250 adoptees born between 1928 and 1939. According to reported Russell working in Adoptee Deaths Rare, experts say, Chicago Tribune 2004, defense attorneys said that adopters were stunned by the extent of the children's medical needs and behavioral disorders, while prosecutors accused the defense lawyers of trying to shift the blame to innocent victims who survived deprivation of Russian orphanages only to die in families that were supposed to care for them. These cases also reveal that the reasons adopters have murdered their adopted children are different than in cases of biological parents who killed their own offspring. In some cases, what pressure otherwise nonviolent adopters may be their belief that they must appear to the world to be perfect parents, and so an adopter cannot fix the child from an unknown pre-adoption past by punishing him for his behaviors, and may resort to abuse or murder rather than seek help, and thereby risk appearing as imperfect as any parent. Hence the ad on page 29 in this book, reassuring prospective foster adoptive parents they don't have to be perfect, which one wonders if imperfect excuses individuals who are sexual predators, physically and emotionally abusive, neglectful, and even homicidal. But also adoption and rife with make-believe from the chosen child myth to the as born to myth from the adoptee's falsified birth certificate, and psychotherapists will agree that lies are unhealthy and are concerned. Okay. Disrupted or failed domestic and foreign adoption has always been difficult to track because of privacy policies that conceal the identity of the child, and there's no monitoring after finalization of the adoption. Disruption can mean that the child was turned back to the system as data on foster kids is evident, or it can include adoptions that ended due to abuse or murder of the adoptee. We do know from multitude of studies that adoption disruptions tend to appear to increase commensurate with an increase in adoption. But statistically, representative studies of adoptees are usually not the representative. Florida is among the few states voluntarily tracking disrupted and dissolved adoptions, which happens when adoptive families return children to foster care while in the process of or after completing an adoption. Florida had nearly 200 dissolved or disrupted adoptions in the year 2008 to 2009, a year when the state had a total of 3,777 adoptions. Wow, that is quite an odd number. In Oklahoma, one child advocate said half the 14 boys in the group home where she worked first had been adopted and then returned to the foster system, then readopted. Legislators were pushed for a new law in 2009, fearing the process had insufficient transparency. A Pennsylvania adoption program estimates about 60 of the 200 foster children came from failed adoptions. See, here's what's gross. Everyone wants to push adoption as an alternative, but they don't see all of this, right? Adoption already is traumatic for the child and will have trauma responses. And the reason that most adoptees what people don't see is that, so adoption is already traumatic for the child, right? And people assume that newborns will be blank slates, but they're not. So when they adopt from foster care, or older children who already had homes, like in the sense of a lot of, foreign adoptions, right? The child's a little bit older, tends to be, whether they're, a few months old to a few years old. They've already been through things. However, because nobody's trained in these trauma responses, they will completely ignore them, and that is why there's more adoptions. forgetting that that causes more harm. Now, yes, I am in the sense where adoption annulment needs to happen, only for the safety of the child when necessary. There needs to be more training as well. This is not okay. If you intend to adopt, I hate to say it, there should be the forever home. And I hate that. I don't even like the adoption term, so you guys know that. But here's the thing. When you're taking in a child in the sense of an adoption, it's meant to be that is your child forever. You would not give up your biological child in this case. You do everything to help them. They don't do that with adoptees. They will ship them off. Oh, you're going back to foster care, or you're going to a residential home, or you're going to a boarding school, or you're going to military school. They don't understand this, and this is why it's a problem. It's very telling when these parents say, "Oh, my own children" versus "I adopted." It's very, very telling. It's gross. Anyway, sorry, I went on a big rant there. Meanwhile, Antonia Forkin Edwardson, Executive Director of the Joint Council of International Services, an umbrella group of adoption agencies, claimed abuse cases amount to only a tiny minority of the thousands of adoptions that occur every year. The majority of international adoptions are positive and the families are happy. However, how would Ms. Edwardson know that when there is no follow-up after finalization of the adoption? Yeah, there really isn't. I will say that because of I was a privately independent adoption, right? That's the way that my APs adopted me. And the only reason that there was a follow-up, and there was only one, and I was 1 month old, was because of the court. They wanted to see how I was transitioning before the final adoption. There was nothing after that date. Nothing. Not one. Now, in my case, I'm very lucky because my APs are amazing. However, I'm in the 1% of good adoptions. 99% of adoptions are not that lucky. That is not good. Now, my APs also sought out help. They have done training. They went above and beyond of what I would expect an AP to do, of what I would demand an AP to do now, at the bare minimum. So that's pretty sad. I mean, good for my APs, sad for what's going on because they don't get it. Now, here's the thing. There was a study, it's not said in the book, but there was a study, I gotta find it. There was a study that said that, adoptees are happy, but they asked at the age of 5. A 5-year-old is going to say they're happy with their parents, majority of the time, unless there's abuse, and even then, they could be scared of the parent. You ask an adult at different stages of their life, they're going to say different things, especially for an adoptee who's out of the fog, right? It's the truth. And so those studies are not good. Anyway, 50 to 80% of all foreign adoptions are terminated, and that's according to foreign adoption source Risk Not Uncommon in the Saginaw News in 1991. Homicide is one of the leading causes of death of children under age 4, yet we persist with the unrealistic view that this is a rare behavior, says Jill Corbin, expert on child abuse who has studied mothers who killed their children. 5 motives that might lead a mother to kill their biological child: maltreatment or chronic abuse, mental illness that includes thoughts that killing a child is a type of mercy killing, the child is unwanted, the mom is psychotic, and media syndrome. A parent kills the child as revenge against the partner. Revenge during divorce and custody dispute can also provoke maternal filicide. And that's according to Susan Friedman, psychiatrist at Universal Hospitals Case Western Cleveland. Jeffrey McKee, a forensic psychologist who studied homicidal mothers, adds to the above list: detached moms who may suffer from postpartum depression or who fail to bond with the infants. Postpartum mental illness, which can last indefinitely, can range in severity from depression to psychosis to personality disorder. Isolation after separation without help is also a factor. abusive or neglectful moms who act out of rage and fail to meet their baby's needs. The cases of biological mothers include young moms who kill their newborns after concealing their pregnancies and delivering the baby alone. We see these reports all the time, right? Mothers who neglect their children or fail to get them needed medical attention are the most common and most often involve young mothers raising several children alone. Some mothers fail to protect their children from abusive husbands or boyfriends. Mothers who attempt or succeed at committing suicide have taken the children with them to protect them, as Susan Smith claimed she intended when she let her car roll into South Carolina Lake with her 2 sons strapped into their car seats. That's gross. A study in the Journal of the National Medical Association in 2003 noted a frequency of substance abuse and intellectual impairment among parents who kill their children. Now, Lori Carangelo does go on to list the abuse and deaths of Russian adoptees caused by American adopters. It is about 3 pages long. I am actually not going to read all the names because it is very sad, and it's hard enough reading these books without being triggered. So if you want to check it out, obviously you know what the book is, and I highly advise you guys to go check it out, whether it's a library or on Amazon. But it really is a good book. Anyway, we're going to move on. Adopters who abused and killed other inter-country adoptees. There are no official statistics on failed international adoptions, which is why the public eye became focused on failed Russian adoptions. The public eye is now tracking cases of abused and murdered adoptees in other foreign adoptions. Carrie Simon, yeah, I was trying to say that word nicely, RN, and Niels Kugaveen have been collecting reported cases of adopted children abused by their adopters. They tallied the cases according to the sending country from which they originated at poundpuppylegacy.com. This chapter includes the cases of foreign-born adoptees who were abused and killed by their American adopters in the U.S., another negative outcome for foreign-born adoptees adopted in the U.S. that led to an adoptee's death became apparent in 2012. In the case of Tio, it's weird the way that this is spaced, but okay, advocates to the rights of international adoptees. The suicide was wrenching reminder of a problem the United States urgently needed to address. Adoptees from abroad who never obtained citizenship. The Adoptee Rights Campaign, an advocacy group, estimates that 35,000 adult adoptees in the United States may lack citizenship. That's true. Which was not granted automatically in the adoption process before 2000. There are many others legally adopted as children into American families who either have been deported to the birth countries they left decades ago, or faced deportation after being convicted of crimes as adults. Some did not even know they were not American citizens until they were ordered to leave. That's according to Cho Sang-hun, Deportation, a death sentence to adoptees after a lifetime in the United States. And this was in the New York Times in 2017. The previous cases in this chapter concerned adopters who abused and killed adoptees from Russia. And then they go through the following news stories are the cases that they are talking about. Again, I'm not going to read each one. They're quite sad, and there are several pages of this, so you get the point. It's just too much. It's very triggering as an adoptee. But if you want me to go through some of these, just let me know down below. We can talk more about each case. Anyway, we're going to continue on. Adopters who abuse and kill in domestic U.S. adoptions. Abuse of adopted children have been America's badge of shame since America's first known adoptees in 1620. Mary Moore, 4 and her sister Ellen More, 8, they were scheduled for the long voyage from England aboard the Mayflower, among the first 102 pilgrims brought to America in a 66-day voyage. The Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, Massachusetts on December 26, 1620. Because Mary and Ellen Moore's wealthy parents, Samuel and Catherine Moore of Shropshire, England, went through a bitter separation and divorce, Samuel realized his children would be a social disgrace, but also wanted to punish his wife for her extramarital affair with Jacob Blakeway, who Samuel found out was the actual biological father of the girls. So Samuel paid to have the girls sent away on the Mayflower. The abandoned, neglected girls died that winter despite being adopted into a respectable Pilgrim family. Now, I don't know about that abuse. I mean, that a lot of people died during that voyage because it was really, really bad. I mean, if you read the stories of that voyage, it was bad. But also, a lot of people died that winter because there wasn't enough food. They weren't prepared. The winters in the northeast of America are very different from England, and they were not prepared for it at all. Okay, moving on. I'm not saying that the adopted family should have been to blame. I'm just saying that there could have been other factors in that particular case. Anyway, not only abuse, but also murders of adopted children by their adopters is not a new phenomenon, but it is an increasing one. The concept the concept of adoption was not legally formalized by a statute until 1851 in Massachusetts. 4 years later, the earliest known case of abuse and murder of an adopted child was reported by the New York Times on September 28, 1854, in Murder of an Adopted Child in New Orleans, describing the abuse and subsequent death of Christian Rohner, a 2-year-old boy adopted by a couple from New Orleans. Christian was locked up in the Rohner's attic, starved to the point of being completely emaciated, and beaten to death by his male adopter. The first 30 known cases of Russian children at the hands of their American adopters detailed above caused Russia to halt inter-country adoptions, and where experts said only tip of the iceberg of cases of adopters ill-equipped to deal with the children they adopted. As adoptions are promoted and fast-tracked, it's no surprise that it's easier for children to fall into the wrong hands. Okay, so again, they go through a lot of cases. There are a number of cases here. Oh my gosh, it's quite gross. I mean, I'm going to tell you how many pages of cases there are. There are 15 pages worth of cases for that one. Yeah. Alright, here's another little paragraph about more deaths. This is a different version, and then there is more cases attached to this particular one. There's like 2.5 pages worth of cases for attachment therapy and rebirthing deaths. So again, I'm going to skip the cases, but here is what they say about the attachment therapy and rebirthing deaths. Between 1989 and 2009, there were at least 32 known cases of child deaths from attachment therapy and rebirthing. According to Linda Rosa, RN, attachment therapy is the worst quackery in our nation today. To our most vulnerable children, adoptive, foster, and minority children, attachment holding therapy and therapeutic parenting means nothing less than childhood of relentless torture, inflicting fear, pain, humiliation, bizarre notions of reality, threats, forced intimacy, and isolation from friends and family. How is all this expected to lead a child to trust, love, and be happy? We do know it has led to death. Attachment therapy and rebirthing sessions are deadly assaults on children, advanced by professionals as a cure for attachment disorder, commonly diagnosed when the adopters simply don't like their adopted children, or when the adopted children don't like their adopters. In the rebirthing procedure, the child is wrapped in a blanket, theoretically, theoretically representing the birth canal, and forced to make his or her way out of the blanket under their own power. In this crude and dangerous attempt to transform the chosen child into one as born to the adopter as a forever family, children have ended up forever dead from suffocation and being literally crushed to death. So there is a content creator named Carlos Dillard who does talk about his experience with this. I believe he has a YouTube. He also had a podcast and he has TikTok, where you can go check out his stories. He does also have a book out that you can check. I'm not sure if he talks about it in that book. I have yet to read it. I do own it. I just haven't had the chance to grab it, but definitely worth checking out. Anyway, the chapter then goes on to tell you all of the 32 cases where attachment therapy caused the deaths. Literally, attachment therapy is like the chokehold, where it is banned for police to use on people. Well, it's basically the same thing. It's the same technique, but under the reattachment. You're going to reattach the parent. That's not going to work. You're just causing more mistrust and really torture. Anyway, that is the end of the chapter. I thought it was going to be a lot longer because it was a lot of pages, but I skipped a lot because of the chronological order. So please go check out the book. I recommend it. I'll see you later.